I saved a stranger on the street, and in doing so, I lost my job. But what I didn't know then, that stranger would turn out to be my new boss. Hey everyone, welcome to today's story. Sit back, relax, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell, because you won't want to miss what happens next. Emma Smith rushed through the busy streets of New York City, her heels clicking against the pavement as she glanced at her watch. It was 8:45 a.m., and she was running late, again. Her stomach rumbled, reminding her she'd skipped breakfast in her frantic effort to catch the subway. Today was going to be tough. Her boss, Mr. Thompson, was strict about punctuality, and she could already imagine the scolding she'd receive. But just as Emma passed a crowded corner, something caught her attention. A man in his mid-30s, dressed in a sharp business suit, was stumbling. His face was pale, and he clutched his chest as if in pain. Emma slowed her pace, watching as the man leaned against a building before collapsing to the ground. Her heart leapt into her throat. "Hey! Are you okay?" she called out, rushing toward him. The man didn't respond. He was breathing, but barely, his face drained of color. Without hesitating, Emma knelt beside him, pulling out her phone and dialing 911. "There's a man," he collapsed on the corner of 5th Avenue and East 32nd. "Please send help," she cried, her voice shaking. The operator assured her that an ambulance was on the way. Emma stayed by the man's side, holding his hand and praying he would make it. When the ambulance arrived, she instinctively climbed in with him, explaining that she wasn't a relative but couldn't just leave him there alone. As the doors closed, she realized the consequences. She was going to be very late to work. But in that moment, it didn't matter. A man's life was on the line. By the time Emma arrived at work, it was well past noon. She hurried into the office, drenched in sweat and nerves, mentally rehearsing her excuse. But when she walked through the door, she was greeted by the furious glare of her boss, Mr. Thompson. "Miss Smith, where have you been?" he snapped, his arms crossed. Emma opened her mouth to explain, but he cut her off. "Save it. You've jeopardized today's project by being late, and I won't tolerate it. You're fired." The words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. "Fired?" she echoed, stunned. "But No excuses. Pack your things and go." Tears stung her eyes as she gathered her belongings. The weight of the morning's events bore down on her. She had saved a man's life, and in doing so, lost her job. As she left the office building, the reality of her situation sank in. Unemployed, with bills piling up and rent looming, Emma didn't know what to do next. She found herself wandering the streets, her feet carrying her back toward the hospital where the man had been taken. She needed to know if he was okay, needed some kind of closure to this whirlwind of a day. When she arrived, a kind nurse informed her that the man was still unconscious but stable. Emma let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. For reasons she couldn't explain, she felt responsible for him. She couldn't just walk away. Days passed, and Emma's job search yielded nothing but rejections. Every morning, she sent out her resume to countless companies, only to receive the same polite refusals. It was disheartening. But in the midst of her struggles, she found solace in visiting the hospital. The man, whose name she still didn't know, remained in a coma, but Emma felt a strange connection to him. One day, as she sat by his bedside, she began to talk to him, sharing her thoughts, her frustrations, and her hopes. "I lost my job," she told him softly. "But I'm starting to think that maybe it was a sign. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realized I want to help people. Really help them. Not just file papers or answer phones." She didn't expect a response, of course, but talking to him made her feel less alone. As the days turned into weeks, Emma began volunteering at the hospital. She found a sense of purpose there, helping patients and their families. It wasn't a job that paid the bills, but it gave her something she hadn't felt in a long time: fulfillment. One morning, Emma arrived at the hospital and was greeted with surprising news. The man had woken up. Her heart raced as she walked to his room. When she entered, she found him sitting up in bed, his eyes scanning the room, clearly disoriented but conscious. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Emma felt a rush of emotion. "Hi," she said, her voice soft. "I'm Emma. I'm the one who found you." The man blinked, clearly trying to piece everything together. "David," he said finally, his voice raspy. "David Reed. I don't remember much, but, thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't helped me." Emma smiled, though she felt awkward. "I'm just glad you're okay." Over the next few days, David slowly recovered, and Emma continued to visit him. He told her about his work, his life, though it was clear he was still regaining his strength and memory. She didn't mention the fact that she had lost her job because of helping him, and he didn't press her for details about her own life. It was as if an unspoken understanding existed between them. One day, David asked Emma to sit down. "I've been thinking," he said, looking at her seriously. "You've been here every day, haven't you?" Emma nodded, suddenly feeling self-conscious. I didn't know anyone else was visiting you, and it didn't feel right to leave you alone." David's gaze softened. "I'm grateful. More than you know." He paused. "I don't usually talk about my personal life, but I feel like I owe you an explanation. I run a company. A big one, actually, Reed Technologies." Emma's eyes widened. Reed Technologies was a massive tech company, known worldwide. She hadn't realized who he was. David continued, "I don't have family. My parents passed away a few years ago, and my work keeps me so busy that I haven't had time to form close relationships. When I collapsed, no one knew where I was." Emma nodded, understanding. "I'm glad I could help." David smiled. "You did more than help. You saved my life." David wasn't the type to let things go unaddressed. After a few more weeks of recovery, he made a proposal to Emma. "You've told me a little about what you've been going through," he said. "I know you lost your job, and I know you've been struggling. I want to offer you something, a position at my company. I need a personal assistant, someone I can trust. And I think you're exactly the kind of person I need." Emma was floored. "David, I don't know what to say. I don't have experience working for a tech company." "You'll learn," David replied with a smile. "But more importantly, you care. That's something that can't be taught." After taking some time to consider it, Emma accepted the offer. It was a chance to rebuild her life, to learn new skills, and to work alongside someone she had come to admire. As she settled into her new role, she and David grew closer, not just as colleagues but as friends. The more time they spent together, the more Emma found herself drawn to David. He was smart, driven, and kind, a rare combination in her experience. She admired the way he handled his responsibilities and the respect he commanded from his employees. And slowly, she began to realize that her feelings for him went beyond admiration. David, too, seemed to be growing more comfortable around Emma. Their conversations became more personal, their interactions more intimate. He would touch her arm lightly when they talked, or hold her gaze a little longer than necessary. One night, after a long day working on a major project, they ordered takeout and sat together in David's office. They laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed each other's company in a way that felt more natural than ever before. When the conversation turned quiet, David looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Emma," he said softly, "I've been thinking. I never believed in fate or destiny. But after everything that's happened, I can't help but feel like our meeting was meant to be." Emma's heart raced. "What do you mean?" she asked, though she had an idea of where this was going. David took her hand gently. "I mean, I think I've fallen in love with you." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. But then she realized that she felt the same way. All the time they had spent together, the connection they had built, it wasn't just a professional relationship anymore. "I think I've fallen for you too," she whispered. David leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a gentle, tentative kiss. Emma felt warmth spread through her as she kissed him back, the world around them fading away. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. Their relationship, however, wasn't without its challenges. As word of their romance spread through the company, Emma faced scrutiny from some of her colleagues. There were whispers about favoritism, and some questioned whether she had earned her position. David was supportive, always reassuring her that she belonged, but the pressure began to weigh on Emma. She didn't want to be seen as someone who had only succeeded because of her relationship with the boss. One night, after a particularly hard day, Emma confronted David about her fears. "I don't want people to think I'm only here because of you," she said, her voice trembling. David held her close. "You're here because you've earned it, Emma. You've worked harder than anyone, and you've proven yourself. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." Chapter 10, A New Beginning. In time, Emma's dedication and hard work silenced her critics. She took on more responsibilities at Reed Technologies, proving that she was more than capable. But she never lost sight of the things that mattered most to her, helping others and making a difference. With David by her side, Emma found a balance between her career and her passion for helping people. She continued to volunteer at the hospital in her spare time, and she even began exploring ways to incorporate charitable work into Reed Technologies. As they sat together one evening, looking out over the city skyline, Emma smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. "I never expected my life to turn out like this," she said softly. "But I wouldn't change a thing." David squeezed her hand. "Neither would I." Together, they knew they could face whatever challenges the future held. Their story wasn't just about saving a life, it was about finding new beginnings, and the strength that comes from love and kindness.